After 3,000 years of peace, aliens declared war. Humanity's response left them terrified. For 3,000 years, silence ruled the stars. The old war had been buried in treaties and forgotten in myth. But when the armistice broke, the aliens returned, not with peace, but with fire and fury. They expected fear. Instead, they heard laughter. Humanity had been waiting. The Declaration. The message reached every human colony simultaneously. From Earth to the furthest reaches of human space, the transmission cut through regular broadcasts with crystal clarity. Commander Vexhar of the Galactic Dominion stood before the assembled fleet of 10,000 warships. His forearms spread wide in what his species considered a gesture of absolute authority. Marcus Rivera, Earth's senior diplomat, sat in his Geneva office watching the transmission with his morning coffee. He'd been expecting something like this for weeks. The intelligence reports had shown unusual movement in Dominion space, gatherings of fleets that hadn't assembled in millennia. Still, watching the 7-foot-tall reptilian commander deliver his ultimatum was something else entirely. "Humans of the Sol territories," Vexhar began, his voice carrying the weight of ancient authority through the universal translator. 3,000 years ago, our civilizations signed an armistice. Your aggressive expansion forced us to contain your species to designated sectors. That containment ends today. Rivera took another sip of coffee and checked his watch. The rest of the diplomatic corps would be arriving soon. He wondered if they'd have time for lunch after dealing with this. Your colonies have spread like a virus through the galaxy. Vexhar continued. Your ships pollute the cosmic highways with their primitive drives. Your people show no respect for the ancient order that has maintained peace for eons. The Galactic Dominion, representing 47 species and 12,000 star systems, hereby declares the armistice void. You have 72 of your hours to surrender unconditionally. The transmission showed the massive Dominion fleet spread across space like a metallic storm cloud. Ships of every configuration imaginable hung in perfect formation. Crystalline. Vessels from the Apex Collective gleamed alongside the organic bioships of the Thylorian swarm. The mechanical precision of the Dominion's own dreadnoughts formed the center of the armada. Rivera's assistant, Jennifer Park, knocked and entered his office. "Sir, the Security Council is assembling. President Martinez wants you there in 10 minutes. "Tell her I'll be there in 5, Rivera replied, finishing his coffee. "And Jennifer? Cancel my lunch reservations. This might take a while." As he walked through the halls of the Global Defense Building, Rivera noticed something odd. People weren't panicking. Scientists were excitedly discussing the alien technology visible in the transmission. Military personnel were making jokes about the outdated formation patterns. Someone had already started a betting pool on how long the aliens would last. The Security Council chamber was filled with Earth's leadership, both in person and via hologram. President Isabella Martinez stood at the center, her expression more amused than concerned. "Marcus, glad you could join us," she said. "I assume you've seen our friend's dramatic announcement?" "Hard to miss," Rivera replied. 10,000 ships is quite the statement. General Chen Lei, head of Earth Defense Command, pulled up a tactical display. "Our analysis shows their fleet is using technology roughly equivalent to what we had 500 years ago. Those dreadnoughts, they're so proud of? Our cargo haulers have better shields. Let's not get overconfident," President Martinez cautioned. "They still represent a significant force. Marcus, what do we know about this Commander Vexhar?" Rivera activated his neural interface, pulling up the relevant files. "He's young by Dominion standards, only about 200 years old. Rising star in their military hierarchy. No actual combat experience, though. The Dominion hasn't fought a real war since us. And that's the real question, isn't it?" Dr. Sarah Kim, Chief Science Advisor, leaned forward. "Why now? What changed?" Rivera had been wondering the same thing. The armistice had held for 3 millennia. Humans had carefully stayed within their designated zones, at least officially. Unofficially, well, that was another matter entirely. "I think," Rivera said slowly, They've forgotten why the armistice was signed in the first place. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the stories passed down through generations. The brief, terrible war that had ended with humanity's containment. But the details had been classified for so long that even most of Earth's leadership didn't know the full truth. President Martinez turned to General Chen. "What's our military readiness?" Chen almost laughed. "Madam President, our automated defense grid could handle this without human intervention. But I recommend we try diplomacy first. No need to traumatize the entire galaxy." "Agreed," Martinez said. "Marcus, open a channel to Commander Vexhar. Let's see if we can talk some sense into him." The connection established quickly. Vexhar appeared on the main screen, clearly surprised by the rapid response. Behind him, his bridge crew, a mix of different species, watched nervously. "Commander Vexhar," Rivera began pleasantly. "I'm Marcus Rivera, Earth's diplomatic representative. We received your message. Very dramatic. The production values were excellent." Vexhar's scales shifted color, a sign of confusion. You mock us? We bring the combined might of the Galactic Dominion to your doorstep and you joke?" "Not mocking," Rivera assured him. "Just appreciating the effort. It's been a long time since anyone's tried to invade us. We're almost nostalgic. Now, about this whole surrender business. I'm afraid that won't be possible. We have plans for the weekend." The commander's forearms clenched in what Rivera recognized as rage. "You dare refuse? Your species will be crushed. Your worlds will burn. Your people will serve the Dominion for eternity." "Commander," Rivera said gently, like a teacher explaining something to a particularly slow student. "Have you actually read the historical records of why the armistice was signed? Of course, your aggressive expansion threatened galactic stability. The Dominion graciously allowed your species to survive in contained sectors rather than face extinction." Rivera exchanged glances with President Martinez. The poor commander really didn't know. "I see," Rivera said. "And in your historical records, how long did the war last?" 17 of your months, Vexhar replied proudly. "The longest conflict in Dominion history." "And how did it end?" "With your complete defeat and containment, as I said." Rivera sighed. "Commander, I'm going to send you some files. Actual historical records from both sides. I suggest you read them before making any aggressive moves." "We need no human propaganda." "Commander," Rivera interrupted. "I'm trying to help you here. Read the files. Then, if you still want to proceed, we can discuss terms. But I strongly encourage you to reconsider." He cut the connection before Vexhar could respond and turned to the council. "Think he'll listen?" President Martinez asked. "Probably not," Rivera admitted. "They never do at first. General Chen, better put the fleet on standby. Not the military fleet, the civilian emergency response fleet. We might need to rescue survivors." As the council dispersed to their duties, Rivera remained behind, staring at the tactical display showing the Dominion Armada. 10,000 ships, 47 species, all united in their determination to put humanity in its place. They had no idea what they were walking into. His personal communicator chimed. It was a message from his daughter Luna studying xenobiology on Mars. "Dad, saw the alien declaration. My friends are starting a drinking game. One shot every time they mention our primitive technology. Should be fun. Love you." Rivera smiled. The younger generation wasn't worried at all. They'd grown up in a humanity that had moved so far beyond its warlike past that the idea of interstellar conflict was almost quaint. They built worlds now, not weapons. They shaped stars, not soldiers. They created life, not death. But if the Dominion insisted on learning the hard way, humanity would oblige. After all, it had been 3,000 years since they'd had to remind the galaxy why the armistice was signed in the first place. Perhaps a reminder was overdue. The first strike captain, Elena Volkov, was in the middle of overseeing a particularly delicate mining operation when the Dominion fleet arrived. The Ceres deep mining complex was extracting rare elements from the asteroid's core using controlled singularities, a process that required precise timing and concentration. The last thing she needed was an alien invasion. Captain, her operations officer, Lieutenant David Wong, called out. We've got multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Configuration matches Dominion military vessels. Volkov didn't look up from her console. How many? Looks like 300 ships, Captain. They're forming an attack pattern. 300? Volkov finally glanced at the tactical display. For Ceres, that seems excessive. We're just a mining operation. The truth was, Ceres Deep was much more than just a mining operation. It was one of humanity's primary research facilities for exotic matter manipulation. But the Dominion didn't need to know that. Incoming transmission, Wong reported. The main screen lit up with the image of a Dominion fleet commander, not Vexhar, but one of his subordinates. This one appeared to be from the Crystalline Apex Collective, its body refracting light in geometric patterns. Human facility, the creature's harmonious voice rang out. I am Resonance Commander Shalthis. You will power down all systems and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction. Volkov stood up, stretching casually. She was a tall woman with silver hair kept in a practical bun, and eyes that had seen too much to be impressed by threats. Resonance Commander, she replied politely. I'm Captain Elena Volkov. I'm afraid I can't comply with your request. We're in the middle of a delicate extraction process. If we power down now, the singularity we're using could destabilize. That would be bad for everyone in this system. Your lies will not save you, Shalthis hummed. Surrender or be destroyed. Volkov sighed and turned to Wong. David, please activate Defensive Protocol 7. 7? Wong looked surprised. Isn't that a bit much for only 300 ships? We don't want to seem rude, Volkov replied. The space around Ceres began to shimmer. To the Dominion fleet sensors, it must have looked like some kind of shield activation. In reality, it was something far more sophisticated. Shalthis ordered the attack. 300 ships opened fire simultaneously, pouring enough energy into their barrage to crack a small moon. The beams and projectiles streaked toward the mining complex in a rainbow of destruction. They never arrived. The weapons fire simply stopped. Not absorbed, not deflected, just ceased to exist about a kilometer from the station. The energy was quietly converted into useful power for the mining operation. Thank you for the extra energy, Volkov said cheerfully. That actually helped stabilize our singularity. Very thoughtful of you. On the Dominion ships, alarms began blaring. Their weapons were being drained. Not just their weapons. All their systems were slowly losing power as if something was gently siphoning it away. Back on Earth, Marcus Rivera was watching the encounter through a secure feed. President Martinez and the Security Council had gathered to observe humanity's first military engagement in centuries. Are they actually using a mining station's equipment to drain an entire fleet? General Chen asked, sounding impressed. The principle is the same, Dr. Kim explained. If you can extract energy from a singularity, pulling it from something as simple as a fusion reactor is child's play. Meanwhile, at Ceres, Shalthis was ordering increasingly desperate attacks. Missiles, particle beams, even ramming attempts, nothing worked. The human station sat there, peacefully continuing its mining operation while 300 of the Dominion's finest warships flailed helplessly around it. Resonance Commander, Volkov said after about 10 minutes of this. Your fleet's power levels are dropping to critical. You might want to retreat before your life support fails. This is impossible. Shalthis's harmonious voice had taken on a discordant note. You're just a mining station. We're a human mining station, Volkov corrected. There's a difference. Now I really do recommend you leave. We're about to start our second shift extraction, and the gravitational fluctuations can be unpredictable. She wasn't bluffing. The controlled singularity at Ceres' core began to pulse, sending out waves of gravitational distortion. To the Dominion fleet, it must have felt like space itself was breathing. Several of the smaller ships were pulled off course, tumbling helplessly in the gravitational currents. The larger vessels managed to maintain position, but their crews were clearly panicking. Retreat, Shalthis finally ordered. All ships, emergency jump. The Dominion fleet fled, leaving behind several disabled vessels that couldn't manage the jump to hyperspace. Volkov immediately dispatched rescue shuttles. David, send medical teams to those stranded ships, she ordered, and see if our guests would like some coffee while they wait for pickup. Back on the Dominion flagship, Commander Vexhar was receiving reports from multiple fronts. The attack on Ceres wasn't the only failure. A strike force sent against Europa Station had been repelled by what appeared to be weaponized weather patterns. Another group attacking a human colony in the Proxima system had been stopped by something that traumatized survivors could only describe as aggressive negotiation by artificial intelligence. This doesn't make sense, Vexhar muttered, studying the reports. These aren't military installations. They're civilian facilities. His second-in-command, a Thylorian named Carthex, writhed nervously. Perhaps the humans have militarized their entire civilization? No, Vexhar said slowly. It's something else. They're not fighting us. They're just dismissing us. He pulled up the files Rivera had sent him. He'd ignored them initially, too proud to accept human propaganda. But now, with his fleet being humiliated across human space, he needed answers. The first file was a historical record from the Dominion's own archives, but a section he'd never seen before. It required the highest security clearance, which his position had only recently granted him. As he read, his scales gradually shifted from the deep purple of confidence to the pale gray of fear. The war 3,000 years ago hadn't lasted 17 months. It had lasted 17 days, and it hadn't ended with humanity's defeat. It had ended with the Dominion's complete and utter surrender. The humans had developed something called cascade weapons, devices that could propagate destruction through hyperspace itself. A single human ship had demonstrated this by destroying an entire Dominion fleet that was scattered across 12 star systems simultaneously. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the note at the end of the file, added by the Dominion negotiator who had signed the armistice. The humans showed mercy. They could have destroyed us all. Instead, they accepted our surrender and agreed to stay in their designated sectors. We told our people it was containment. In truth, it was quarantine, for our protection, not theirs. Vexhar's communication panel chimed. It was Rivera calling from Earth. Commander, the human diplomat said kindly, I see you've read the files. Would you like to discuss terms now? You knew, Vexhar said, his voice barely a whisper. You knew what would happen. We hoped you'd reconsider, Rivera replied. We've changed, Commander. Humanity isn't interested in war anymore. We've spent 3,000 years evolving past that. We build now. We create, we explore. But if you insist on fighting us, well, our civilian infrastructure alone is more than capable of defending itself. Your civilian infrastructure? Vexhar couldn't hide his disbelief. Commander, you just watched a mining station disable 300 warships without firing a single weapon. Our children play with technology that your military considers classified. We reshape stars for art projects. What did you think would happen when you declared war on us? The Revelation Doctor. James Chen floated in his laboratory aboard the Dyson Research Station, a massive facility that orbited within the energy collection sphere surrounding Wolf 359. He was in the middle of calibrating a new type of quantum manipulator when his assistant rushed in with news of the Dominion's declaration of war. Dr. Chen, you need to see this, Lisa Park said, projecting a holographic display. The aliens are gathering their entire fleet near the Sagittarius sector. Intelligence estimates over 9,000 ships are converging on what they're calling a final strike against Earth. James barely looked up from his work. 9,000? That seems insufficient for a final strike against Earth. Insufficient? Lisa laughed nervously. Dr. Chen, that's the largest fleet assembly in recorded galactic history. Yes. But they're using conventional hyperspace drives, fusion reactors, and what appears to be particle-based weaponry, James noted, finally examining the tactical data. Earth's automated garden maintenance drones have more sophisticated systems. It wasn't an exaggeration. The technology gap between humanity and the Dominion had grown exponentially over 3 millennia. While the Dominion had remained relatively static, content with their established technologies, humans had pushed the boundaries of science to points that seemed like magic to less advanced species. Meanwhile, aboard the Dominion flagship, Commander Vexhar was facing a mutiny. Not a violent one, his subordinates were too disciplined for that, but a crisis of faith that threatened to tear the alliance apart. You lied to us, accused Prelate Maxian of the Void Seekers, his gaseous form roiling with agitation. The historical records were falsified. The humans didn't lose the war, we did. The command chamber was filled with representatives from all 47 species of the Dominion. They had just finished reviewing the true historical records, and the mood was one of barely controlled panic. "My ancestors made a decision to protect our civilizations," Vexhar said, trying to maintain authority. "They believed that if our people knew the truth, that humans had spared us out of mercy rather than being contained, it would destroy our entire social order. And now you've provoked them again," chittered Representative Tikatkek of the Hive Collective. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking," Vexhar said with forced calm, "that 3,000 years was enough time for us to catch up technologically. I was thinking that humans isolated in their sectors couldn't have advanced much further. I was wrong." Back on Earth, Marcus Rivera was in a secured conference with President Martinez and the Global Leadership Council. The mood was surprisingly relaxed considering they were technically at war. "The Dominion fleet is massing for what they're calling their final assault," General Chen reported. "Should we intercept them?" "No need," Dr. Sarah Kim interjected. "James Chen at Wolf 359 has offered to demonstrate one of his new projects. He says it would be educational for the Dominion." President Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Educational how?" "He wants to show them what humanity has been working on for the past 3 millennia, Dr. Kim explained. "Specifically, his stellar engineering project." Rivera leaned forward, interested. "The one where he's trying to convert stars into computational matrices?" "That's the one. He believes a practical demonstration might convince the Dominion that warfare is inadvisable." The president considered this. "No casualties?" "Dr. Chen guarantees it. He's planning to use what he calls a gentle touch." Knowing James's definition of gentle, the Dominion is in for an interesting experience, Rivera mused. "Approve the demonstration." In the depths of space, the Dominion Armada, 9,000 strong, approached the outer edge of human territory. Their plan was simple: overwhelm humanity's defenses through sheer numbers and force a surrender before the humans could deploy whatever terrible weapons they had used 3,000 years. Ego Commander Vexhar stood on his bridge, watching the fleet form up. Despite everything he'd learned, he couldn't simply retreat. The political situation within the Dominion demanded action. If he withdrew now, it would mean civil war among the member species. "Commander," his sensor officer announced, "we're detecting an unusual energy signature from the human system ahead." "What kind of energy signature?" "It appears to be stellar manipulation, sir. They're doing something to the star." On the main screen, Wolf 359 came into view. But something was wrong. The star was flickering, pulsing in patterns that seemed almost like... "It's a message," the communications officer said, astonished. "The star itself is transmitting a message in our language." The message was simple: "Welcome to human space. Please observe safety protocols." Then Dr. James Chen appeared on their screens, broadcast from his research station. He was an elderly man with wild gray hair and eyes that sparkled with barely contained excitement. "Greetings, Dominion Fleet," he said cheerfully. "I'm Dr. James Chen. I understand you're here for a military demonstration." "How fortunate. I was just about to test my new stellar manipulation array." "Would you like to watch?" Vexhar found his voice. "You're threatening us with a weapon." "Weapon?" Dr. Chen looked genuinely confused. "Oh no, this isn't a weapon. It's a research project. I'm trying to convert stellar masses into computational substrates, basically turning stars into giant computers. But the initial calibration can be a bit energetic." Without waiting for a response, Dr. Chen activated his array. The space around Wolf 359 began to ripple with forces that the Dominion's sensors couldn't properly identify. Then slowly, impossibly, the star began to change. Its surface started forming patterns, geometric shapes that pulsed with mathematical precision. Solar flares erupted in controlled bursts, each one releasing more energy than the Dominion's entire fleet could generate in a year. The star's color shifted through the spectrum, each change corresponding to some incomprehensible calculation. "As you can see," Dr. Chen continued casually, as if he wasn't performing miracles, "we can manipulate stellar fusion processes at the quantum level. This particular configuration is solving prime number sequences, but we can adjust it for any computational need." The Dominion fleet's shields were screaming warnings. The controlled stellar output was washing over them in waves, not harmful, but overwhelming their systems with its sheer magnitude. "The interesting part," Dr. Chen added, is that this is one of our smaller projects. We have a team working on converting an entire nebula into a neural network. Fascinating stuff. Commander Vexhar watched his tactical display in growing horror. Every reading was off the scale. The humans weren't just more advanced, they were operating on a completely different level of existence. Dr. Chen, Vexhar managed to say, "Please." "Stop the demonstration!" "Oh, of course," Dr. Chen said brightly. "I hope this has been educational. By the way, if your ships need any repairs from the gravitational stress, our maintenance drones can help. They're quite efficient." As if on cue, thousands of small objects emerged from hidden stations around the system. They moved with impossible speed and precision, surrounding the Dominion fleet in seconds. These weren't weapons, they were construction drones, each one capable of dismantling and rebuilding matter at the molecular level. "Your choice, Commander." Marcus Rivera's voice came through the communication channel. "We can end this peacefully, or Dr. Chen can continue his demonstrations. He has 17 more stellar projects he's eager to test." The resolution, the Great Council chamber on Terra Prime, had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate representatives from all 47 species of the Galactic Dominion. It was the first time in 3,000 years that aliens had set foot on humanity's birth world, and the occasion was both momentous and slightly awkward. Commander Vexhar sat across from Marcus Rivera, his forearms folded in what humans might recognize as a defensive posture. Around them, the greatest minds and leaders of both civilizations gathered to negotiate what everyone hoped would be a permanent peace. "Before we begin," President Martinez said, standing at the head of the assembly, "I want to make something clear. Humanity has no interest in conquest, domination, or revenge. We've evolved past such primitive concepts. What we want is cooperation." Prelate Maxian's gaseous form swirled skeptically. "You have the power to destroy us all. Why would you choose cooperation?" It was Dr. Sarah Kim who answered. "Because destruction is easy. Creation is hard, and creation is so much more interesting." She activated a holographic display showing humanity's projects across the galaxy. Dyson spheres, stellar engines, worlds being terraformed, entire ecosystems being crafted from scratch. "We've spent 3,000 years learning how to build," she continued. "How to create life instead of ending it. Every human child learns the fundamental principle: the universe is vast enough for everyone." Vexhar studied the displays with a mixture of awe and incomprehension. "You're transforming entire star systems into what exactly?" "Whatever we need them to be," James Chen answered via hologram from his research station. "Gardens, computers, art installations. We even have one system that we've converted into a massive musical instrument. It plays symphonies using gravitational waves." The silence that followed was profound. The Dominion representatives were trying to process a civilization that had moved so far beyond conventional understanding that their achievements seemed like mythology. "What do you want from us?" Vexhar finally asked. Rivera smiled. "Knowledge, perspectives, experiences. Your civilizations have existed for millions of years. You must have incredible stories, unique ways of understanding the universe. We want to learn from you." "Learn from us?" Carthex the Thylorian couldn't hide his disbelief. "Your technology is eons ahead of ours." "Technology is just one form of advancement," Rivera explained. "The Apex Collective has developed forms of mathematics based on crystalline harmonics that we've never considered. The Thylorians have an understanding of biological systems that could revolutionize our life creation projects. The Void Seekers perceive dimensions we can barely detect." President Martinez stood again. "We propose a new alliance, not based on military might or territorial boundaries, but on shared knowledge and mutual growth. We'll share our technology freely, help you advance your civilizations, and in return, you share your unique perspectives and discoveries with us." The Dominion representatives exchanged glances. It was Representative Tikitkit who spoke first, the translator rendering the Hive Collective's chemical communication into words. "You would share your stellar engineering technology, your matter manipulation techniques?" "Everything," Martinez confirmed. "Though we'll start with basic safety protocols. Some of our technology can be hazardous if mishandled." "Like what?" Vexhar asked. Dr. Chen's hologram flickered slightly as he laughed. "Well, last week a kindergarten class accidentally created a micro-black hole during a science project. Took us nearly an hour to contain it. Children, you know, always pushing boundaries. The casual mention of children playing with black holes sent another wave of shock through the Dominion representatives. What kind of species had humanity become? I have a question, Shalthus of the Apex Collective harmonized. If you're so advanced, so beyond violence, why maintain the pretense? Why let us believe we had contained you? Rivera's expression grew thoughtful. Because 3,000 years ago we realized something important. We had become dangerous, not just to others but to ourselves. The weapons we created to win that war, they scared us, so we chose isolation not as a punishment, but as a chance to grow, to evolve past our violent nature. And you succeeded? Vexhar asked. Look around you. Rivera gestured to the chamber, then to the city beyond the windows. New Geneva sprawled to the horizon, its towers reaching into the clouds, its parks and gardens floating at different levels, defying gravity. Children played in the streets with toys that manipulated fundamental forces. Artists painted with light itself. We don't have military academies anymore, Rivera continued. We have creator schools. We don't train soldiers. We train builders, dreamers, explorers. The very concept of using violence to solve problems has become quaint. But you could still destroy us, Vexhar pointed out. Anyone can destroy, President Martinez said gently. A child with a rock can break a window. It takes no skill, no intelligence, no wisdom. But to create a window? To understand the science of glass, the art of its shaping, the engineering of its frame? That takes knowledge, patience, skill. Which achievement would you rather be remembered for? The negotiations continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Dominion had come seeking war and found instead a species that had transcended it. They had expected to find enemies and discovered potential teachers. As the terms were being finalized, technology exchanges, cultural programs, joint exploration initiatives, Vexhar found himself standing on a balcony with Rivera, looking out over the city as Earth sunset. I have to ask, Vexhar said. Those Cascade weapons from 3,000 years ago, do you still have them? Rivera was quiet for a moment. No, we dismantled them all within a decade of the war's end. They were too dangerous to exist. Then how did you defend yourselves? If another threat had emerged? Rivera smiled. Commander, we didn't need weapons. We had something far more powerful, the ability to create. Any tool can be a weapon if necessary. A mining station can drain a fleet. A research facility can manipulate stars. Even our children's toys could probably defeat most military forces. But that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to build, to learn, to grow. And if someone absolutely insisted on destroying you, then we'd probably build them something so wonderful that they'd forget why they wanted to fight us in the first place. 3 months later, the first Dominion students arrived at human universities. The initial culture shock was severe. Watching human children casually manipulate forces that the Dominion considered divine was jarring. But gradually they adapted, learned, grew. Vexhar himself enrolled in a course on stellar engineering taught by Dr. Chen. On his first day, he found himself sitting next to a human child who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Hi, the child said brightly. I'm Lucy. Are you here for the basic class too? Basic? Vexhar managed. Yeah, we're just learning how to make stars change color. Next semester we get to learn how to make them sing. As Vexhar watched Lucy casually manipulate a holographic star, making it pulse through the spectrum with childish delight, he understood finally what humanity had become. They hadn't just advanced technologically. They had evolved philosophically. They had taken the infinite creative potential that had once been channeled into war and turned it toward wonder. The war that the Dominion had declared lasted exactly 0 days. No shots were fired in anger. No lives were lost. Instead, something far more profound occurred. The birth of the first truly galactic civilization, built not on conquest but on curiosity. In his personal journal, Vexhar wrote, We came to wage war on gods and found instead teachers, friends and the promise of a future beyond our wildest dreams. The humans' greatest victory was not in defeating us, but in showing us that defeat and victory are concepts as obsolete as the weapons we once thought defined strength. The 3,000-year armistice was over. In its place, something infinitely better had begun. Epilogue. 1 year later, Ambassador Marcus Rivera stood in the newly constructed Galactic Cultural Exchange. a massive station built at the intersection of human and Dominion space. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of species coming and going, no longer in military formations, but in the chaotic, beautiful pattern of free trade and exploration. A young Thylorian approached him, wearing the uniform of a human university. "Ambassador Rivera, I wanted to thank you. Your negotiation techniques course has been invaluable." "I'm glad to hear it," Rivera replied. "How are you finding your studies?" "Challenging. Yesterday in my matter manipulation class, we learned how to convert energy directly into organized matter. My people thought such things were only possible in the heart of stars, and now, the Thylorian's form rippled with what Rivera had learned was laughter. Now I know that humans do it in their kitchens. They call it molecular gastronomy." Rivera smiled. All across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Dominion scientists working alongside human researchers, alien artists learning to paint with gravity, human children playing with their new friends from species that, just a year ago, had been prepared to destroy them. The war that never was had become the peace that always should have been. And in the end, that was humanity's greatest triumph. Not that they could have won the war, but that they had chosen not to fight it at all. As Rivera watched the stars through the station's vast windows, he thought about the message humanity had sent to the universe. We are no longer warriors, we are creators, and there's room for everyone in what we're building. The galaxy, it seemed, had finally gotten the message.